So what if I told you that the absolute best way to, break free from dating apps, escape the endless scrolling, and just cure your digital burnout? Wait, no, let me rephrase that.
Sure.
What if the cure to all that digital burnout was to voluntarily hand over your social life to a highly invasive, hyper-specific matching algorithm?
I mean, honestly, it sounds like a complete contradiction.
Right.
Because we are constantly told, put the phone down, go outside, just go meet people in the real world.
Like it's that easy.
Exactly. But the reality of modern social friction tells a very different story. I mean, you can't just walk into a room of strangers anymore without a massive amount of anticipatory anxiety.
Oh, absolutely. It's terrifying for most people.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the exact paradox we are exploring today. You are listening to a deep dive into the architecture of modern human connection.
It's a fascinating subject.
It really is. We are analyzing this operational model from a company called SpeedMingle. And they've essentially built this system designed to engineer serendipity, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, engineered serendipity is a great way to put it.
Right. And they are doing it by completely deconstructing the traditional face-to-face social event, applying some heavy behavioral economics, and using technology in a way that actually forces you to eventually look someone in the eye.
Well, to really understand the sociological architecture of what they are doing, we kind of have to look at the rubble of what came before them.
Yeah, the graveyard of early 2000s dating events.
Exactly. SpeedMingle didn't just emerge in a vacuum. They actually hold the title of the original speed dating and networking experience, having established themselves way back in 2001.
Which is wild to think about. That's a quarter of a century ago.
Right. So that gives them, 25 years of data on how human beings attempt to find each other. And more importantly, it gives them front row seats to the catastrophic failure rate of the legacy speed dating industry.
Okay, let's start right there with that failure rate. Because the data in our sources shows that historically, around 90% of speed dating companies have just completely collapsed and ceased operations.
90%.
I mean, 90%. That is a staggering attrition rate for literally any industry.
It really is. And it points to a fundamental flaw in the original design of these events. I mean, think about the physical and psychological environment of early 2000s speed dating.
Okay, paint the picture for me.
So you're walking into a rented community center, right? Or some sterile hotel conference room.
Or the worst vibes.
The worst. The lighting is fluorescent. The acoustics are terrible. You have these two long rows of folding chairs. And the entire premise is built on what sociologists might call high-stakes evaluative fatigue.
Evaluative fatigue.
Yep.
That perfectly describes the sensation. It doesn't even feel like a conversation. It feels like an interrogation.
Exactly.
Because you have exactly, 3 to 7 minutes to sit across from a single person. You are rapidly assessing physical chemistry, scanning for red flags, and simultaneously trying to deliver a perfectly rehearsed elevator pitch of your entire existence.
Which is incredibly taxing on the human brain. I mean, the traditional one-on-one mini interview format, it artificially inflates cortisol levels.
You're just stressed out the whole time.
Completely. It triggers a fight or flight response rather than a social bonding response. You aren't actually getting to know the person. You are just interacting with their defense mechanisms.
Right, their walls are up.
Right. And the objective in that legacy model was almost exclusively rigidly romantic. Like, if you didn't feel an immediate romantic spark with the person across the table, that 3-minute block was just categorized in your mind as a failure.
So you basically spend an hour experiencing 20 micro failures in a row.
Yes.
That completely explains the burnout. But the 90% industry collapse wasn't just about bad vibes in a community center, was it? The structural failures were much deeper, specifically when it came to data privacy.
Oh, privacy was the fatal flaw. It's what brought the legacy industry down.
How bad was it?
Well, the old model relied on literal physical scorecards.
Wait, like paper and pen?
Paper and pen. You sat down, you had your 3-minute interview, and you literally checked a box on a piece of paper indicating if you wanted to see that person again. And at the end of the night, you just handed that paper to some organizer.
And then what happens?
Yeah.
The organizer goes home, opens a spreadsheet, and starts manually matching people up.
Exactly. That's exactly what they did. And the execution was notoriously reckless. If there was a mutual match, the company would routinely email out your personal contact information.
Oh, no.
Sometimes just an email, but often a personal cell phone number.
Okay, let me stop you there.
Yeah.
Because the potential for disaster is just so obvious. If you go to an event and you sit across from someone who makes you intensely uncomfortable, you're obviously not going to check the box for them.
Right, of course not.
But if a tired event organizer misreads a handwritten scorecard or just, accidentally CCs the wrong person on an email, they have just handed your personal phone number to someone you actively wanted to avoid.
And it happened constantly.
Are you serious?
Yeah, the unauthorized release of participants' personal information to individuals they absolutely did not wish to meet was like the dark secret of the early speed dating boom.
That is a profound breach of trust.
It really was. So when you combine the clinical high anxiety environment with the very real threat of a data leak, it becomes completely clear why the traditional dating rules just had to change. I mean, modern professionals simply will not tolerate that level of risk or that kind of sterile environment today.
Which brings us to the evolution, right? The pivot from speed dating to speed mingling. And the distinction here, based on the sources, it's not just a marketing rebrand. It is a fundamental shift in the psychological intent of the gathering.
Exactly. The intent shifts from a rigid, binary, romantic assessment to an open-ended, dynamic cocktail party atmosphere.
That sounds so much better.
It is.
Yeah.
Speed mingling is engineered to broaden social horizons. You are no longer trapped in a binary of future spouse or total waste of time. You might be attending to find a romantic partner, certainly, but you are equally encouraged to attend to find a new platonic friend, to expand a professional network, or just to engage in casual social connection.
It changes the entire definition of success for the evening.
It does.
If traditional speed dating treats every non-romantic connection as a failure, speed mingling treats every genuine human interaction as a win. Like, you might not meet your soulmate, but you might meet a graphic designer who can help you with your startup, or someone who wants to join your weekend cycling group.
And by lowering the stakes, you ironically increase the likelihood of genuine romantic chemistry.
Because everyone's just relaxed.
Exactly. When people are not operating under the crushing weight of a 3-minute marital audition, their true personalities actually emerge. They relax. The social friction dissipates.
But hold on, let me push back for a second. If we are ditching the rigid sit-across-the-table format, how does the architecture of the event actually function? You can't just shove 50 people into a room, tell them to mingle, and expect magic.
No, definitely not.
Because we have all been to unstructured networking events, and they inevitably devolve into awkward high school dances. The extroverts dominate the center of the room, and everyone else just hugs the wall staring at their drinks.
That is the exact problem of unstructured group dominance. And it is why Speed Mingle utilizes a highly specific environmental engineering tactic, starting with what we can call the group mingle protocol.
The group mingle protocol. Okay, break it down for me.
When you attend an event, you are not thrown into a free-for-all, nor are you placed in a one-on-one scenario. You are carefully curated into groups of 4 to 6 people.
Groups of 4 to 6. That is a very specific number. Why not pairs, and why not larger circles of, say, 10?
It ties into Dunbar's number and the biological limits of conversational cognitive load.
Oh, cognitive load. Interesting.
Right. When a group exceeds 6 people, human conversation naturally fractures. It splits into side conversations because our brains just struggle to track more than a few active conversational threads simultaneously.
That makes total sense. Like at a large dinner party, you end up just talking to the person next to you.
Exactly. By capping the table at 4 to 6 people, the organizers force a single, unified group dynamic.
And the data emphasizes that these groups might have an even gender split, or they might not, right?
Correct. Because the goal isn't a transactional romantic match. The gender ratio at any given table is secondary to the psychographic compatibility.
Okay.
If you are sitting at a table with 5 other people, the value of the interaction isn't strictly based on who you might want to date. It is based on shared interests.
I understand the theory, but I still have to challenge the reality of group dynamics here. Putting 4 to 6 strangers in a circle is a recipe for the loudest person in the room to just hijack the entire round.
Oh, we all know that guy.
Right. We all know him. He sits down and immediately launches into a 10-minute monologue about his golf swing or his cryptocurrency portfolio. How does a quiet, introverted person ever get a word in?
That is the Achilles heel of any group setting. To solve it, Speed Mingle introduces a physical catalyst into the environment. They place a proprietary tool right in the middle of the table. A 54-card deck called 52 plus 2, the card game.
A literal deck of cards.
A literal deck of cards engineered specifically for seamless introductions. During the 10 to 15-minute connection rounds, the group uses these cards to guide the conversation.
And that 10 to 15-minute window is crucial, by the way.
It really is.
Because 10 minutes is long enough to get past the superficial pleasantries, but short enough that if you are stuck at a table with zero chemistry, you know a rotation is imminent. It provides a psychological safety net.
Exactly.
But I want to dig into these cards because on the surface, a card game sounds a bit like a, forced corporate team building exercise.
But if executed poorly, yes, it totally can be. But the design of the 52+2 deck is meant to bypass the most creatively bankrupt question in the English language. What do you do for a living?
Ugh, yes. It is the default setting for every adult conversation. And it instantly forces people into a socioeconomic hierarchy.
It does. It also forces people into their rehearsed conversational loops. We all have a polished, highly edited script we use for strangers.
Like our PR statement.
Right. The cards act as a social equalizer. They feature thought-provoking scenarios and engaging prompts that force you off your script.
I imagine these cards act like a conversational heat shield.
What do you mean by that?
Like, if I ask a group of strangers a deep, revealing question out of nowhere, it can feel invasive. I might look overly intense or weird, but if I draw a card and the card asks the question, the social pressure is entirely externalized. If the question bombs, we can blame the deck, not my lack of social grace.
That is precisely the psychological mechanism at play. It transforms an interview into a shared game. The tension just diffuses instantly.
That's brilliant.
Instead of staring at each other trying to invent small talk, the group is unified by a third-party prompt. You draw a card that asks, for example, what the most spontaneous decision you've ever made was. Suddenly, you aren't reciting your resume, you are telling a story.
And for the introverts at the table, this is massive. You don't carry the cognitive burden of driving the conversation. The card does the heavy lifting. You just get to answer honestly.
Yes, exactly.
And it completely neutralizes the loud guy who wants to talk about golf, because the rules of the game dictate that everyone gets a turn to answer the prompt.
Furthermore, it encourages what sociologists call empathetic listening.
Okay, empathetic listening.
Yeah, so in high-anxiety situations, most people engage in passive listening. They are just waiting for the other person to stop moving their mouth so they can deliver their rehearsed line.
Guilty.
We all do it. But the unique prompts force you to actually listen to the answers because they reveal authentic passions, humor, and vulnerabilities. You are listening to understand, not just to reply.
Okay, so the table environment is highly structured to feel unstructured. We have groups of 4 to 6 to maintain a unified conversation. We have the 10 to 15-minute rounds to keep energy high. We have the 52+2 conversational heat shields to bypass small talk.
Correct.
But the lingering question is curation. How did I end up at that specific table with those specific people? If this isn't random, there must be a mechanism sorting the room.
This is where the digital architecture comes in, and where we address your opening thought about algorithms. The company uses a proprietary platform called the SmartSync app.
Right, which, if the goal is to escape digital burnout, using an app to sort people seems counterintuitive. Aren't we just reinventing the algorithmic echo chamber here?
Not exactly, because the algorithm isn't optimizing for engagement time on a screen.
Okay, what is it doing?
It is optimizing for physical propinquity based on intent.
Propinquity meaning physical closeness or proximity.
Yes. Before you even set foot in the venue, you log into the SmartSync web app to complete a profile. But unlike legacy dating apps that prioritize height, age, or a heavily filtered photo, SmartSync builds a psychographic profile.
Break down the difference between demographic and psychographic in this context. I think that's super important for you, the listener, to grasp.
Sure. Demographics are statistical data relating to the population age, income, race, height. Psychographics are qualitative methodologies used to describe traits like psychological attributes, values, opinions, and interests.
Okay.
The SmartSync algorithm calculates compatibility percentages based almost entirely on your psychographic data, specifically your intent and your shared interests.
So how does the system weigh those elements? Like, where does it even start?
It begins with what they call a deal breaker category. This is where you declare your primary purpose for attending the event. You are forced to choose one of 4 distinct lanes: networking, friendship, dating, or casual fun.
That is a brilliant piece of social engineering.
It really is.
Because the greatest source of friction at any mixer is a misalignment of expectations. Imagine the sheer waste of energy if someone is looking for a serious long-term romantic relationship and they spend an entire 15-minute round trying to flirt with someone who is strictly there to find new clients for their accounting firm.
It creates mutual frustration. By forcing users to define their intent, whether that is networking for industry insights, friendship for a workout buddy, dating for romance, or casual fun for spontaneous, low-commitment interactions, the algorithm establishes a baseline of mutual expectation.
Right. And once the intent is locked in, how does it build out the rest of the psychographic profile?
Through granular interest categories, users select from a vast array of topics. The system categorizes these into broad buckets like adventure, arts and culture, creative outlets, film and television, fun and games, food and drink, health and lifestyle, intellectual stimulation, and sports and activities.
So the algorithm is doing all the heavy lifting behind the scenes. It cross-references your deal-breaker intent with your specific interests, and it calculates a mathematical compatibility percentage with every other attendee in the room.
Correct. So when you walk into the venue and sit down at your assigned table for the first round, you aren't sitting with random strangers. You are sitting with a group of 4 to 6 people who have a statistically verified common ground with you.
It really is engineered serendipity. You draw a 52+2 card about your favorite travel memory, and because the algorithm quietly grouped you with people who all selected adventure and food and drink as high-priority interests, the whole table immediately connects over stories of backpacking and street food. The friction is just gone.
Exactly. But for this level of psychographic profiling to work, the user has to trust the system. Which brings us back to the privacy failures of the 2000s we talked about.
Yes, the spreadsheets.
Right. If I'm feeding my intentions, my interests, and my personal data into an app, I need absolute assurance that I am not going to end up on a leaked spreadsheet.
The data vault. How does SpeedMingle actually protect the information during these events?
They have instituted what is essentially a zero-trust architecture for personal data during the physical event. When you arrive, you interact using your first name only.
Just your first name.
Just your first name. There are no last names printed on badges. No business cards are exchanged unless you explicitly choose to do so. But the protection goes much deeper into the demographic data itself.
What do you mean by demographic data protection?
SpeedMingle maintains a strict policy where they refuse to disclose specific registration data prior to, during, or after the event. They will not tell you the exact head count. They will not disclose the specific age ranges of the people currently registered. They completely lock down data regarding gender identities and racial backgrounds.
Now, let me push back on that for a second. Because if you are listening to this and you are pulling out your credit card to buy a ticket to one of these events, that total secrecy requires a massive leap of faith.
It does.
Why wouldn't they tell me the age breakdown? What if I am 28 years old and I walk in and the entire room is in their late 50s? Isn't withholding that information a disservice to the customer?
It's understandable why you'd feel that way, but it is a deliberate friction designed to combat preconceived biases.
Interesting.
The company operates on a strict, intentional open age policy for all adults 21 and over. While they note in the sources that their events typically attract a vibrant professional crowd ranging from mid-30s to early 60s, the doors are open to anyone of legal drinking age. Their stated philosophy is that great chemistry transcends numbers.
Great chemistry transcends numbers. That is a direct attack on modern swiping culture.
Exactly. Think about how we behave on traditional apps. We apply ruthless, arbitrary demographic filters.
Oh, totally.
We filter out anyone who isn't exactly between the ages of 28 and 32, or who isn't a specific height. We treat humans like Amazon products. By locking down the demographic spreadsheet beforehand, SpeedMingle prevents you from making snap judgments based on arbitrary numbers. They force you to evaluate the actual human being sitting in front of you.
They are essentially saying, we have verified that this person shares your exact interests and your intent. Stop worrying about what year they were born and just talk to them. It forces a level of open-mindedness that algorithms usually destroy.
It creates a safe, unbiased environment. But the privacy protection extends beyond the physical room. The most critical security feature is how they handle post-event matchmaking.
Right, because the old model was the organizer emailing out your phone number. How does SmartSync handle the follow-up if we only know each other's first names?
They use a double opt-in system entirely contained within their own digital ecosystem. I like to compare it to a physical safety deposit box that requires 2 completely different keys to be turned simultaneously before it will open.
The safety deposit box metaphor is perfect.
Yeah.
Walk us through how those keys turn.
Sure. After the event concludes, you go home and log into the SmartSync web app. The dashboard populates with the profile pictures and the calculated compatibility percentages of the people you interacted with.
Okay, so I see a list of faces.
Right. Let's say you had a great conversation with someone named Michael about independent cinema. The algorithm shows you have an 88% compatibility in the friendship category.
So I have my key. I indicate in the app that I am interested in connecting with Michael.
Yes, but nothing happens until Michael also logs in, sees your profile, and explicitly indicates that he wants to connect with you. He has to turn his key too. Both parties must express mutual interest. Only then does the vault open.
And when it opens, what happens? Does it send him my email?
No, this is the crucial distinction. Even when a mutual match is confirmed, no personal contact information is exchanged. None. The communication is initiated strictly within the SmartSync web app's internal chat feature. SpeedMingle never hands out your last name, your email address, or your personal phone number.
Wow. Which completely eliminates the modern nightmare of having to gently reject someone over a text message because an event coordinator carelessly handed out your cell number. You are entirely in control.
Exactly. The platform empowers the user. They operate on the principle that sharing personal contact information should always be a conscious, deliberate choice made by the individual after trust has been established, never an automated process executed by a third party.
It is a complete structural inversion. The legacy model was highly structured in person, but reckless and fluid with your data afterward. This modern model is highly fluid and relaxed in person, but operates like an absolute fortress with your data afterward.
Precisely. So we have analyzed the theory, the psychology of the group protocol, the mechanics of the 52+2 cards, and the algorithmic vault of the SmartSync app. But to truly understand how the sociological architecture functions, we need to examine it in practice.
Let's ground this in reality. The source material provides a comprehensive case study of an actual scheduled event. It allows us to look at the sensory architecture and the behavioral economics of how they pull this off in the real world.
Yes, the event is titled Hook, Line, and Speed Mingle. It is part of their second Sunday summer series, scheduled for July 12, 2026. The timing is notable. It runs from 4:30 p.m. to 7 p.m.
A Sunday afternoon in the middle of summer. And the location is critical. You are not walking into a windowless hotel conference room with a water cooler in the corner. You are heading to downtown Pensacola, Florida, specifically to a venue called Slick Lips Seafood and Oyster House on Palafox Street.
The choice of venue is arguably as important as the matching algorithm. You cannot engineer a dynamic cocktail party vibe in a sterile corporate environment. The physical space dictates the psychological comfort of the attendees.
And Slick Lips is fascinating just on a cultural level. The sources note it gets its name from a local fisherman's nickname for the amberjack fish, which apparently don't have any teeth, hence slick lips. That quirky local history is an icebreaker before you even walk through the door.
The environment is described as upscale casual, a vibrant coastal hotspot, and this introduces the concept of the sensory architecture of a social event.
Let's explore that, because the sensory inputs, lighting, noise, smell, have a direct impact on our nervous system.
Exactly. When you are in a sterile hall with bright overhead lights, your brain perceives it as an evaluative environment, like a hospital or an interrogation room. Cortisol rises. At a venue like Slick Lips, the sensory inputs are designed to lower defenses. The warm coastal ambiance, the ambient sound of upbeat but non-intrusive music, the clinking of craft cocktails.
And the food. We cannot underestimate food as a secondary social lubricant. We actually have the menu details from the source material, and it paints a vivid picture of how food facilitates connection.
Sharing a meal, or even appetizers, triggers deep evolutionary social bonding mechanisms.
Imagine sitting at a table with 4 strangers. You've just drawn a 52+2 card, and the server drops off a plate of smoked cheddar bacon bombs with sweet chili aioli, or a basket of beignets. It provides a shared physical experience. The menu highlights their Oyster Rockefeller, a full dozen for $36.99, char-grilled, topped with Rockefeller cream sauce, crispy bacon, and Parmesan cheese.
It sounds incredible. Or consider the timing. Running from 4:30 to 7 p.m. on a Sunday bridges the gap between late brunch and early dinner. The sources explicitly mention brunch items like the $15.99 strawberry cream cheese French toast.
Brioche topped with fresh strawberries and vanilla bean cream cheese. When you are breaking the ice over something highly sensory and indulgent like that, it completely transforms the context of the interaction. It doesn't feel like a networking event. It feels like a genuinely enjoyable lifestyle experience. It lowers the stakes.
And the visual branding of the event supports this entirely. The logo for the Hook, Line, and Speed Mingle event is a masterclass in communicating vibe.
Oh, I love the logo and the sources.
It features a retro nautical aesthetic, a fish jumping on a hook, a man and a woman casually holding drinks on a wooden dock with a sunset backdrop. It is framed by a basket of fresh oysters and a shucking knife on one side, and an elegant etched glass craft cocktail with a lime wheel on the other.
It sells a sophisticated, relaxed summer narrative. It tells you, the prospective attendee, this is a safe, civilized place to spend your Sunday afternoon. But convincing people to actually commit to a social event with strangers requires more than just a nice logo and good oysters. It requires financial manipulation.
Financial manipulation is a harsh term, but accurate. We are talking about the behavioral economics of ticket pricing. The pricing tiers are not arbitrary. They are meticulously structured to engineer human behavior and overcome the natural human tendency to procrastinate social risk.
Let's break down the math on this. According to the sources, the day of event registration for the Slick Lips event is $39.99.
Which, for a curated, algorithmically matched, hosted event at an upscale seafood restaurant, $40 is a very reasonable market rate. However, the structure is designed to heavily penalize anyone who actually pays that amount.
Because they offer an early bird registration for $19.99. That tier closes exactly 10 days before the event. And there is a third option, an Eventbrite exclusive, 2-for-1 registration, priced at $29.99.
We need to analyze why a company would willingly cut their revenue in half for early adopters. Buying the early bird ticket at $19.99 saves the attendee a massive 50% compared to the day of cost.
So why do they need that 50% penalty for procrastinators? What is the operational necessity there?
It comes back to the SmartSync algorithm and the group dynamics. A successful mingle depends entirely on the curation of those 4 to 6 person tables. The algorithm needs time to calculate the psychographic compatibility, cross-reference the intent deal breakers, and structure the rotations.
Ah, I see. If 50 people wait until Sunday morning to buy a ticket, the algorithm doesn't have the runway to do its job. The organizers are flying blind.
Exactly. It is identical to the yield management models used by airlines. The early planner provides the airline with predictability, so they're rewarded with a steep discount. The person who decides to fly on Sunday morning introduces chaos into the system, so they pay the premium. SpeedMingle uses the 50% early bird discount as a behavioral nudge to secure the data they need to build a successful event 10 days in advance.
That makes total sense. But the truly brilliant psychological mechanism is that 2-for-1 Eventbrite option. For $30 total, you and a friend can attend. That drops the per-person cost to $15.
It acts as an anxiety buffer.
It absolutely does. Walking into a room full of strangers alone is the highest hurdle for most people. By heavily subsidizing the cost of bringing a friend, they utilize the concept of social buffering. You drag your introverted friend along, and suddenly, the stakes feel manageable.
Furthermore, it locks in accountability. If you have committed financially 10 days in advance, and you have committed socially by convincing a friend to join you, the likelihood of you ghosting the event drops to near zero. Minimizing the no-show rate is critical when the seating charts are algorithmically predetermined.
Which perfectly explains their incredibly strict refund policy. The sources are very clear on what you are and are not buying when you purchase a ticket.
The policy is uncompromising. They explicitly state, we do not offer refunds if you don't find a match. They also state they do not offer refunds if no one in your specific age group attends.
Which circles back to the open age policy. You cannot demand your money back just because the crowd skewed older or younger than you prefer.
Exactly. The ticket price is a fee for access to the architecture. You are paying for the curated environment at Slick Lips, the implementation of the 52+2 cards, the algorithmic sorting by the SmartSync app, and the privacy vault that protects your data. You are not purchasing a guaranteed outcome. As the organizers frankly put it, chemistry is the one thing we can't manufacture.
It is a totally fair contract. They build the stage, they light the room, they sort the crowd based on shared interests. But you still have to bring your own charm to the table. Which leads us perfectly into the final phase of our analysis. Execution.
Because the most sophisticated matching algorithm in the world cannot save you if you show up to the event and display terrible social mechanics.
Right. So let's say you've bought your half-price early bird ticket, you've brought a friend, you are standing outside Slick Lips on Palafox Street. How do you actually succeed in this environment? The sources provide a very clear operational manual for first-time attendees, starting with visual signaling.
They establish a baseline dress code defined as smart casual.
Smart casual is notoriously ambiguous. It usually sends people into a panic because it straddles the line between too formal and too relaxed.
Yeah.
But the sources provide specific parameters. For men, it means a clean shirt, nice jeans, or chinos. For women, a dress or a stylish top and trousers.
Visual signaling is the first piece of data we process when we meet someone. The goal of Smart Casual is to signal that you respect the environment and the other attendees enough to put in effort, without signaling desperation.
We have an image from the source material that perfectly encapsulates this. The Speed Mingle logo features two illustrated figures. The man is in a gray suit jacket over a crisp orange collared shirt, no tie, very relaxed, paired with dark trousers. The woman is wearing a dark, tailored blazer over a magenta top and a skirt. It is polished, but highly approachable.
But for those who still find the term ambiguous, the FAQ section provides a brilliant, universally understood heuristic. They call it the grandmother rule.
Oh, I found this deeply amusing, but incredibly effective. The rule states, basically dress as if you were with your grandmother in public. If she would not approve of what you were wearing, change.
It is the ultimate clarity. It relies on a shared cultural understanding of propriety.
Exactly. Your grandmother wants you to look handsome or beautiful. She wants you to impress people. But she absolutely does not want you looking scandalous or sloppy at a seafood restaurant on a Sunday afternoon. It instantly calibrates your outfit to the perfect midpoint of respectable and attractive.
And once the visual signaling is handled and you sit down with your algorithmically selected group, the behavioral mechanics take over. The sources outline 3 essential yet profoundly difficult tips for making a great first impression during those 10 to 15-minute rounds.
The first tip is simply, be yourself.
Which sounds like a platitude, but in the context of digital burnout, it is a radical instruction.
Because we are so conditioned to present the avatar version of ourselves, the highly filtered, heavily curated persona we use on dating apps or LinkedIn.
Authenticity requires vulnerability. The goal of the event is to let your actual personality, your quirks, your specific sense of humor, your unpolished thoughts shine brighter than a static profile picture. If you spend the 15 minutes trying to be the person you think the table wants you to be, the algorithm's work is wasted because you are presenting false data.
The second tip is, keep an open mind.
This directly combats confirmation bias. Approach each rotation with a genuine willingness to learn about someone, even if they immediately appear to be outside your typical type.
This is where the open age policy and the psychographic matching really collide. If you sit down and visually assess the table and you realize someone is 20 years older than you, your default digital habit is to filter them out instantly.
Right.
But if you keep an open mind and you trust that the SmartSync app placed you together because you both share a deep intent for networking and a passion for arts and culture, you might discover an incredible mentor, a valuable professional contact, or a fascinating new friend.
The 52+2 cards are designed precisely to reveal the human being behind the demographic shell. But unlocking that requires the third and arguably most critical mechanical skill listed in the sources: active listening.
Let's dissect active listening, because it is entirely different from just hearing words. The sources define it as showing genuine interest by listening and asking thoughtful questions.
We touched on this earlier regarding empathetic listening. The psychological default for most people in a high-stakes social setting is to listen to reply. You are sitting at the table, someone else is talking, and you are internally panicking, formulating your next sentence so you don't sound stupid when it's your turn.
You are treating the conversation like a chess match, where you're just planning your next move.
Exactly. Active listening means you quiet that internal panic and you listen to understand. You focus entirely on the information the other person is offering.
Give me an example of how that plays out with the cards.
Well, imagine someone at your table draws a prompt about their most challenging travel experience, and they briefly mention getting lost in Tokyo. The passive listener waits for them to finish and then immediately launches into their own story about a trip to Paris. The active listener, however, pauses and asks a thoughtful follow-up question, like, getting lost in Tokyo sounds overwhelming. How did you manage the language barrier in that moment?
That is powerful, because it proves you are actually digesting their narrative. You are validating their experience rather than just competing for airtime.
In a fast-paced environment full of strangers, that level of undivided attention is the rarest commodity. It creates an immediate, memorable neurological bond. If you give someone your complete active attention for just 10 minutes, you will stand out in their memory far more than someone who spent 10 minutes reciting a list of impressive accomplishments.
When you synthesize all of these elements, the sheer scale of the engineering becomes apparent. You start with the relaxed, grandmother-approved attire. You sit at a table of 4 to 6 people, carefully curated by the SmartSync algorithm based on your psychographic intent and shared interests. You utilize the 52+2 cards as a conversational heat shield to bypass awkward small talk. You employ active, empathetic listening, and the entire experience is wrapped in the sensory architecture of a venue like Slick Lips, protected by a zero-trust privacy vault that ensures your data is never compromised.
It is a comprehensive sociological counteroffensive against the isolation of the modern digital era.
It really is. So let's review the mission we set out on today. We wanted to understand how face-to-face social events have evolved to cure digital burnout. We discovered a complete paradigm shift. We learned the difference between the high-anxiety evaluative mini-interviews of traditional 2001 speed dating, which had a 90% failure rate, and the fluid cocktail party vibe of modern speed mingling.
We examined the structural shift from one-on-one interrogations to unified groups of 4 to 6. We saw how the introduction of a catalyst, the 52+2 card game, successfully externalizes social pressure and eliminates creatively bankrupt small talk.
We analyzed the behavioral economics of the pricing structure. We saw how the organizers used a 50% early bird discount, dropping the price from $39.99 to $19.99 to penalize procrastination and secure the data they need to balance the room.
And critically, we explored the dual function of the Smart Sync app. It acts as both a sophisticated psychographic matching engine, calculating compatibility based on specific deal breakers and interests, and as an impenetrable privacy vault, utilizing a double opt-in system to ensure your personal contact information is never released to an unauthorized third party.
It is an absolute masterclass in utilizing technology to foster real-world sociology.
Which leaves us with a final, lingering paradox to consider. If we look at the grand narrative of the last 2 decades, the ultimate promise of the digital age was that technology would connect us effortlessly. We built massive algorithms designed to map and monetize the entire human social graph.
But for millions of people, that exact technology resulted in profound isolation, superficial interactions, and deep social fatigue.
Precisely. So as we look at models like Speed Mingle, perhaps we must conclude that the most revolutionary thing a piece of technology can do today is not to keep you endlessly engaged with the screen. Perhaps the highest possible purpose of an algorithm is to simply introduce you to a stranger, mathematically verify that you share a common interest, and then immediately shut itself off so you can actually look them in the eye.
Using the algorithm to defeat the algorithm. Handing over your data just long enough to find someone to share some oysters with, draw a card, and actually listen to their story. That is a brilliant framework. To you, our listener, thank you for joining us on this exploration. We hope this deep dive gave you a completely new perspective on the architecture of human connection and maybe inspired you to brave the real world. Keep an open mind and mingle. Keep learning, keep connecting, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
Thank you for listening
and watching on the new Speed Mingle TV network.